Hey, Mike Jackson here from Best of the Tetons in beautiful Jackson Hole, Wyoming. Today I'm going to show you a step-by-step project going from this position all the way to here and explain a little bit about maybe when you need to go on into Photoshop and do some final cleanup. This image was taken on a gloomy day in November quite a few years ago, and it wasn't perfect conditions with great lighting, but this image in this project will show you how you can do a little bit of artsy work on even a bland image. This was the Wyoming Frontier Prison. It's in Rawlins, Wyoming. Let's jump right in on making some mask here and then work on the project as after we get the mask made. The first thing you would probably do on this kind of an image is try out and see how the select subject works, and sometimes it actually does a great job. And I'm in the develop module, and I've clicked on the masking panel, and you can see that it did an okay job. It did better than on some images, but it still didn't get really, I don't know why it wouldn't get that. It didn't get all this foreground, and it spanned over areas up in here, and we'd have to work on that quite a bit. One of the ways to add to this, the easiest way, is you can add color range, and I can go down and grab some more, and it adds a lot, and you can see that I still have a little bit of green in the sky, and because this is a color range mask, I can fine-tune it a little bit. With the regular select subject, you don't have any fine-tune ability, which is unfortunate. Hopefully they'll fix that and add that. The other issue right now is if you do have the main mask and then you add or subtract subjects to it and build this up and make a really great mask, you get to the very end and you go, oh, now I'd like to flip this over and do an invert, and then that would give me the sky. Right now they're not letting me do that, and so if I can do most of this work on one mask instead of a mask with a whole bunch of adjustments, I can flip that over, do an invert, and so that's what we're going to do here. Command Z a couple of times, and now I'm back to where we were. And a lot of times I make snapshots, and I'll use the history if I want to back up to a certain point. So let's do this the other way. We'll use color range this time. Okay, color range, and I just drag across what is the biggest bulk of all the different colors that are in this project. And now I can use the refine slider and back this down, and I want to go far enough to take the green out that's here in the sky, but not too far, so I don't have to work so hard up in this part. And mainly I'm losing some mask. Everything that's green is actually the mask, and that's the part that's going to get affected if we do any adjustments. Tighter I can make it where it means I don't have to do a lot of extra work right in here. Now this is all just one single color range mask that's on this part, and I'm going to give it a name of just wall. Because it's only one single mask and no additions or subtractions to it, I can do an invert. But what I would do here instead, the first thing I would do, go up on the wall panel, in this case a mask, and then I would say duplicate it. Now this one, instead of calling it wall, we'll just call it sky. And now I can go to the sky mask and invert that one. And now I have two separate masks, and I can work on both parts individually. While we're in the sky mask, I will go ahead and subtract this out, and to do that I would go subtract brush, and I've got it set to high flow. That means it'll just fill in solid, and I've got a feather that'll give me a chance to use the refined mask and not go out into the outside part. And I'm going to zoom in. I've got the navigator. I don't know if you ever use it or not, but I can move around if I have navigator turned on. Now I can paint on here, and in this case I'm subtracting from here, and I have two different size rings here on the brush, and I can of course make it smaller and larger by using the open and close brackets. If I just be a little bit careful and not go out over it, I don't have to worry about cleaning up too much. And now I'll zoom in a little bit, make it smaller It's not the worst thing in the world if you accidentally go out over. I'll do that just to show you, because you can erase part of that if you need to. Now I'm going to make the brush quite a bit smaller and pick up that little top notch. And I'm going to hold the shift key down, or the space bar down, and move over, and we'll clean that up a little bit. What I'm doing right now is I'm subtracting from that mask. And if I see any green in here, I can go ahead and knock that out at the same time. If we look at it now, if I unzoom, I have a pretty good mask of the sky. I've switched this back over to the wall, and I need to add a little bit onto this one, see? And so I'll zoom in again, use the navigator, and this time I'll need to add to the background, and I'll use the brush, and I'll use, I think I've still got the same brush up here. Like I said, if you do go over, I'm going to go ahead and paint in, make sure everything is nice and solid. As long as I stay inside that second ring, I shouldn't go out over it. But if I did, go down and clean this up a little bit more. But let's say I did accidentally go out too far. No problem at all. I just go to the eraser tool, the erase on this brush, and I can erase this. And if I have it, the feather raised up, it just works the same as going with the add the brush. I'm just using the subtract. I'm erasing. So that looks pretty good. Let's go back to fit. And I would call this pretty good on both of those masks now. I forgot to remove the snow at the bottom in the sky mask. See that? And all I have to do is go back to that negative brush and add, just clean that up. And now my mask is in pretty good shape. And normally what I do, I would encourage you to do, is you just go up down there and say good mask and create a snapshot, and that'll let me go back to that spot, this one place. No matter what I do from here on, I can go back to that. I also can use the history, but it's always nice to have that one, kind of a safety net. Okay, let's do a few edits. And while we're in the sky, let's just make the sky a little bit moody and darker and gloomy. Right now, nothing is being affected by the mask, and so now we can make the sky darker. And as soon as I make an adjustment on the slider here, I can see, right now I've got a little bit of a problem here. I need to fix that, and we'll do that. But we'll add a little bit of clarity and a little dehaze. That's a pretty good mask for the sky, I think. And we can now work on the other part. So now we can flip back over and go to the wall, and as soon as I make any kind of an adjustment, again, same as before, it will start. Clarity makes, in one of these kind of things, a grungy image like this. Clarity is actually pretty good. Dehaze will do some pretty interesting things, and makes everything seem like a little more saturated. We're in a pretty good place here. I only have about 7 minutes in making the clean mask. I probably could have done it even faster if I wasn't stopping to talk like I am right now. We can always turn off our adjustments that I've done so far just by clicking on the eyeball. You can use that to kind of give you an idea of what's going on. I'll go back and we'll go right to the main mask, and you can hit the backspace on while you're in the basic tab, and you can see everything that got adjusted since we started this thing. While we're in the basic tab, I can do quite a bit more and maybe take it where I want to go without having to do any extra work. And I warm up everything. Just depends on aesthetically where I want to take this image. But I'm gonna go quite a bit farther since we got all these masks, and we're going to use some Intersect Mask, and we're going to paint on some things. I'm going to show you how to use the Intersect Mask on this project, And just give you an idea of what's going to happen. If we would have gone out and used an add, I'm in the sky area here. If I added a linear gradient, I could drag it down from the top, and this would be effectively what you would do with, a neutral density filter if you did it in the field. And what happens with the neutral density filter is that it goes always across everything, and we really don't want to do that here. What we'll want to do is I can introduce now the Intersect Mask, and so I can Intersect Mask with a linear gradient, and this is going to clip it to the sky here, and I can bring the exposure down. But you see, with this Intersect Mask, it's not going across the tower, and it's not going across the water tower. If you remember earlier, we made a wall mask, then we duplicated it, reversed, inverted those out to work on the sky, and I can do another wall duplicate. But the catch is it's going to have the same adjustments that we already did. And we put dehaze and clarity on the original wall here. You can see it there and there. If I duplicate that, it's going to basically double up those adjustments. So what we can do is go duplicate the wall, and on this wall, and this is a mask that I'm going to use, or the wall mask that I'm going to make lights across. And what I would do is, like, not to worry, is on this one I'm just going to bring everything back, double click on it, and effectively I have another copy of the wall, the original wall, and if I click on this, see, nothing happens. Okay, that's great. And I'm going to just call this one first light beams, and I'll make a duplicate of that one, and I'll call this second beams. And while I'm at it, now this is not going to make a great big file, I'll just make an extra one, just call it safe duplicate, and then I can come back to it if I want to anytime. Safe walls, and I won't really need to use that. I'll just turn it off, and I'll turn off the second light beam. And now what I want to do is do an Intersect Mask, and I'm going to use gradient this time and drag it across, make it look like a couple light beams. We know we're coming from wherever they come from. To do that, I would go Intersect Mask with a radial gradient, drag out the gradient, rotate it, and this is going to add a light beam on here, and you can see that it's going across the water tower. At the same time it's going here. Now I can adjust the brightness of it, and I can make it a little bit warmer, and I can move it all around anywhere I want. That's pretty nice, right? Let's say exposure, I'll bring it down a little bit. So I really don't want to overpower it, but I want it to be there. And what we've done is we've gone across this. So the way to subtract that out, we go subtract brush, and all I have to do is paint across the water tower, and I can subtract it up here a little bit if I want. And now the light is going just across this part of the tower. Now I can do the second beam, do basically the same thing. I'll turn it on, and I will do Intersect Mask with another radial gradient, drag it out, and I'll do the same thing. And I'll turn this one a little bit more of an angle, so it just changes that, like the light spreading out. And of course I can change the shape of it. I can change the angle of it. Let's make this one a little bit more directional. and bring the exposure up a little bit, bring the warmth up a little bit, and move it where I want. If it goes down into an area that I want it to go into, I can use the subtract brush and take some out. So let's take it out down here at the very bottom. I go subtract brush and just take a little bit out at the bottom, and maybe not quite so much right in there. And if that one's still too bright, I can adjust it, or if this one needs to be a little bit brighter, we can do that. And at any time I can move that around. See, I've still got my little pin there, and tilt it out a little bit more. You can see how flexible it is, but you can see that it's only going, because I intersected with it, it's only going on the wall. Okay, let's say that I look at this image and I think this beam is maybe a little too high or a little too low, or it's too bright, and so I could go with the first light beam, select that one, and here's one of those tools that's hidden in plain sight. First thing I could do it would be, of course, take it up or down right here. Another option, if I left it where it was, is another option. If I collapse this arrow, I have the ability to lighten or darken, in effect fade that effect, and maybe I have like 15 or 20 adjustments within that this one mask. It'll do all of those at one time. I can do the same thing with the second beam, and I can always go back down to, I close this up, I can always go back down to the main panel, and I can go do a global adjustment. This is going to do the sky and the whole image at the same time. Again, I can bring the clarity up and make it a lot more grungy. I'm making it moodier here now, right? If you remember, I made a safe mask earlier. It looks like this one. Well, we're going to use it now, and I'm going to actually make another one, and we'll keep this one safe. Duplicate, and this is going to say water tower. Water tower and roof. What I'm going to do on this one will be to intersect with a brush, and then I'm going to make it warmer. I can do the changes later, and darker. And what it's doing right now is it's affecting everything, but when I paint it with the brush here in a minute, and I'll feather that quite a bit, and I'll bring the flow down, and I can just kind of tap in a little bit of warmth here and there. And what's happening, see, is I'm only painting just on the water tower because I'm doing an Intersect Mask, and so it's only going in that one part. Same thing will happen up here. Now if I get down into this, it'll add color to it, but for the most part I can just add a little bit of warmth, and I can erase part of that if I like. Now my water tower looks a little bit more grungy, and it kind of matches the scene, where before it was blue and less grungy. Didn't seem like it went with the rest of the scene. So I'm pretty happy with where we're going with this so far. Let me show you that you still can edit within the existing parts without having to add on more parts. If you remember on the sky here, I put a linear gradient on it. I can still go back in and adjust that. And what made me say that is this felt too bright right in there, and this feels too bright right in there. So remember, that's the second beam, and the radial gradient on that is, I had that pretty bright. I can back that down a little bit, see, and if I want to back that down, I can at any time too, or I can add more. In the long run, these things are pretty darn editable, even after you've gone on and done other things on top of it. Even when I think I'm finished, Sometimes I just go back in and explore a few more options. Let's see if we want to make it a little bit more moody and maybe a little bit more grungy. And I can add texture, I can subtract texture, who knows what it's going to do. And modify all the sliders in the basic tab to heart's content. And the other option too is I can go back to some of my presets that I've already either paid for or built myself, and some of these are just real basic ones that I keep at disposal, and I can just kind of check over and see these are some I built just to make vignettes, and I can add those at any time. I have some sepia filters to try out, and so I can get total different looks real quick, just to kind of get an idea if I would want to go there with this image. There's film effects and cinematic effects and all kinds of really fun things to work with. It's hard to ever know when you're finished on an art project like this one. Even when I think I'm finished, I can always evaluate an image like this and find a few more things. So from the last clip, I did go back in. I used the K brush with the adjustment brush, and I went back in and lightened a few more areas, darkened a few areas, and made some kind of aesthetic adjustments to it. Now, all these things have been done in Lightroom proper, but there are times when I think Photoshop does a better job, and we're at that point now where I would think about doing that. One of the places here, the snow, I don't know that I need that in the final image, so if I went into Photoshop and used some of the clone tools, I can eliminate that if I'd like to. And you'll see a couple of problems. Let me zoom in, and there are a few little problems right in here. I've got that green showing up, that white showing up, and along here I've got a little bit of white halos. Those are easier fixes in Photoshop than they are in Lightroom. So if you're not a Photoshop user, there are a few tools, mostly the cloning tools, that maybe you're getting Photoshop probably with your subscription anyway. Those tools are probably worth learning. The cloning tools and the stamp tools are better there than what we've got here in Lightroom. Well, we're near the end. This is an art project. I don't do all these kind of steps on every image, and you shouldn't. You should need to do that. Most of the things I can do in Lightroom are basic edits, and I can usually do those in anywhere from 30 seconds to 2 minutes and come up with a pretty good edit. But this is an art project. It's hard to ever know exactly when you're finished, but you can see here we started with this. We went to here at this end of this project, and then if I take it into Photoshop, I can do a little bit more cleanup and remove the snow and so forth. But I hope you got quite a bit out of this project. I have a lot of videos now for the masking here, these new masking features, and if you didn't understand everything, go watch some of those other video clips, and cumulatively I think you'll put all these pieces together and you'll be able to do a project something like we did here on one of your images. So this is Mike Jackson at Best of the Tetons, and look for me all over the internet under Best of the Tetons, Instagram, Facebook. I have a blog, I have prints that I sell, and hopefully we'll see you back